Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Now, we YouTubers are prone to a little bit of hyperbole occasionally, are we not? Indeed, let he who is without hyperbole cast the first stone. I'm certainly guilty. Apparently no less than 66 of my videos have featured the word best in the title. Nonetheless, I was intrigued when my mate Russell, the MAD WATCH collector, claimed that the new Seiko Navigator was the best watch of 2023. Now, I have been sworn off Seikos costing more than $1,000 for over 3 years now. But it just so happens that Mr. P bought a Navigator last week for a cracking discount, getting it for under $1,200 equivalent. And I thought, surely I can make an exception to review for all of you what is apparently the best watch of the year. So remember, I may have broken my own rule, but I didn't do it for me. I did it for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for you. Let's flip the camera and get on with it. Now, if you weren't already aware, the SPB411J1 that I'm about to show you is a retro reissue, a near faithful one-for-one of the original Seiko navigation timer from 1968. Seiko being Seiko, they have decided that to celebrate the 55th anniversary of the original watch, they would release what is probably their 55th limited edition reissue of the year so far, in the form of the new one. Here are a few pics of the original for reference. Do bear these in mind when you see the reissue, and if you're over 18 and drinking responsibly, of course, take a shot today every time I say, just like the original watch. And before I even get into this packaging or talk about specifications or dimensions, let's start with the most thorny subject when it comes to contemporary Seikos. No, not quality control. Price. This is a limited edition retro reissue Seiko, and you know what that means. They're going to be asking a few dollars for it. And you're right, they are. 1,500 USD RRP. They're 1,500 GBP RRP as well. And in a rare shout out to my Canadian viewers, 2,150 Canadian pesos. That equates to 2,500 Aussie dollars RRP. Everyone is getting nailed today. It actually looks like the Brits are getting nailed the hardest. So just remember those prices, please, while you look at the pretty pictures. And in fairness, this is a very pretty watch that looks just like the original. It has been a pleasure to shoot. It really does look great from most angles and in most light conditions, but that pretty face comes with a not so pretty price tag. Of course though, you would be insane to pay retail for a Seiko, even a limited edition in inverted commas like this one. Mr. P got about 30% off his. I reckon that's your target, at least 30% off the retail price, regardless of which of the local currencies you plan to drop on one of these. Alright then, back to the packaging. Because this is a limited edition, you do get a nice box. Or should that be boxes? There was an even larger one that I'm not going to show you, with this smaller one contained within it. And contained within it, there is a very attractive watch that you've now had a sneak preview of. Now this one is part of their catch-all prospects line, you know, land, air, sea and all that. But thankfully they haven't slapped the X on the dial anywhere, because that would have made it less, just like the original watch. One other thing to note, I have this sized up for my average size 7-inch wrist, and there are only 3 small links left available. This one taps out therefore at 7.5 inches unless you change the bracelet or find more links from somewhere. Big guys, beware. Alright then, let's do the dimensions and the specifications. This one is 38.5mm in diameter, just like the original watch. 13mm thick exactly. It has a lovely lug-to-lug of 45mm, a less lovely lug width of 19mm, and sized up for me, it weighs in at a very pleasant 125 grams. It has 100 meters of water resistance from a push-pull crown. Crystal is a box-domed sapphire crystal today, a very nice piece of sapphire at that, and the movement is of course a Seiko in-house caliber. It's their relatively new 6R54. Now it's got a closed case back, just like the original watch, which includes etchings reassuring the purchaser that this watch is both a limited edition of 4000 and made in Japan. That case back is high polished though, and as you can see, this one has picked up a few scuffs already. Par for the course, I'm afraid, with this style of case back. The 6R54 is a four-handed version of Seiko's 6R series of movements. It has 24 jewels, it hacks and hand winds. It has stated tolerances of -15 to +25 seconds per day, and crucially, it has a 72-hour power reserve. Now, you don't get a high beat rate, unfortunately, it's still only 21,600 vibrations per hour, and I'm sure you've already identified it as a Caller GMT rather than a Traveller GMT. I've never really understood why people make such a fuss about that particular distinction. If you are actually an international jet setter, let's be honest with ourselves, you're probably not wearing a Seiko, not even a limited edition one like this. Case finish is very simple, just like the original watch. High polished sides, circular brush to the upper lug surfaces, and a really nice coin edge bezel. The bracelet effectively has female end links, even though they look like they were effectively designed for a different watch. The unsigned crown sits down at the 4 o'clock and is recessed into the case, as is the way with a lot of Seikos of yesterday and today. This is great for on-wrist comfort, but it does have drawbacks when it comes to usability. Now, the bezel on this one, being a GMT, is of course bidirectional, but as you can see here, it is friction based. It's nice and smooth, but perhaps a little bit of lighter than I would have preferred to ensure that you don't whack it accidentally, thereby knocking it out of alignment. The bracelet is quite pleasant. It reminds me of the one on my King Seiko retro reissue, perhaps unsurprisingly. It's like a flat Jubilee, but all brushed, no polish on the upper surfaces. The only polish is on the sides. It's a pin and collar system holding it all together, more on that later. The clasp is cute, but it is rather small. Double pushers, the brand name stamped onto the pressed upper surface, only 2 holes of micro adjustment. At least the milled scissor though is one of those beautifully smooth and sculpted ones. When you've seen one of these, when you have held it in your hands, you'll wonder how you could ever cope with anything else. They just look and feel that good. Let's have a look at this sweet dial and handset then. It may not come as a surprise to you, but they're just like the original watch. The dial itself is a really nice mid-grey, it has a sunburst effect, and the piece of crystal lets it do its work unhindered. Indices are applied, very simple rectangular brick shape, but they do actually feature striations on the upper surface. There is a non-colour match date complication at the 3 o'clock, just like the original watch, and an angled chapter ring featuring minute markers and prominent squares with lume circles applied to them at the 5 minutes. The Seiko logo is applied, apparently it's just like it was in the 1960s. Automatic is printed beneath it, and then the water resistance rating printed up above the index at 6. Japan is also printed along with the movement reference just between the indices at 6 and 7. The handset are familiar Seiko fare, they're reminiscent of the hands on a 62 mass, but have been given a modern twist. They're actually half brushed and half polished. Now, we've seen Seiko use this trick to great effect on a lot of their pressage models. It both enhances light play and legibility. And the stainless steel bezel insert is very pleasant. Arabic numerals at the odds are deep filled in black paint, and there are rectangles on the evens matching the rectangular indices on the dial itself. There is a lume pit that is partially recessed, but still just sits above the bezel surface. The light play from this watch is one of its standout features. The grey and the steel go so well together, the tiny little splash of red breaks it up a touch, and the blocky little indices cast shadows on the dial due to their height. The sunburst is noticeable but never invasive, and the sapphire brings it all together. Sometimes watches look better in their press shots than in reality. I think this one looks better in reality than in the press shots. There is some lume on the 3 main hands, on the chapter ring and on the bezel tip. Seiko's proprietary Lumi Bright always scores 7 out of 10. It never disappoints, but it never really excels, and that's the case with the lume on this one, as you can see. It's still there at the end of the test though, which is more than I've said about several other retro reissues from the 1960s. Let's get it on wrist briefly then. It does wear very pleasantly. I am totally comfortable with this size of watch, and it has that lovely case profile reminiscent of a lot of Seiko divers from the same late 60s era. It's quite chunky at 13mm, but the lug to lug is so short at 45 that you soon forgive that. Nice weight, reasonable balance, despite a delicate bracelet relatively speaking. I reckon it's probably 10 grams lighter than it would otherwise be if it had had a chunkier bracelet. It's an attractive wrist roll though, isn't it? The steel bezel, the lovely piece of sapphire, and all of those brushed flat links catching the light nicely. Minimal micro adjustments though, and no half links mean looser is probably going to be better for most people. And that's the pocket shot. Nice size, nice comfort, that little recessed crown's paying dividends at this point in the video. Alright, moans and niggles. Well, I have clearly made a point of telling you how faithful this watch is to the original. And that, of course, is rather the point of a retro reissue. But as a consequence, this style of watch often carries a lot of issues of the original watch. Issues which then are explained away as being just like the original watch. This SPB 411 upgrades certain items, like the crystal, the movement, like the water resistance rating and like the clasp, but yet it leaves other features as they were in 1968. And it's those features that kind of hold this one back a bit. The crown is small and fiddly. It's rather awkward to hand wind because it's recessed and winds from that recessed position. It's a little better when you pull it out to use it, but hey, it's just like the original watch, so I shouldn't complain, right? Similarly, there's very little attempt made to match the bracelet with the case. This is par for the course for Seiko in 2023, so it should come as no surprise that they were at it 55 years ago as well. And I see no reason other than nostalgia and or cost cutting why a GMT watch in 2023 should be released with a friction bezel. They could have made this one a ratcheting bidirectional bezel and made the watch better as a consequence. As mentioned, not a lot of spare bracelet links, and it's a pin and collar with one of those tiny collars. It was a right pain in the posterior to size this one from Mr. P to me. A 19mm lugs means it's going to be an expensive strap monster unless you have a lot of 19mm straps already in your house from other equally awkward watches. Legibility is reasonable as far as the two main hands are concerned, but the needle second hand can get lost against the grey dial, and the GMT hand, whilst being red, is still rather small, but hey, it's just... yeah, okay, that's probably quite enough of that for today, Jody. Nothing earth-shattering on my complaint list then, but remember, this isn't a $500 Seiko, it's a $2,500 Seiko. So, is this the best watch of the year then? Well, if you've been saying a silent prayer every day of your life asking for Seiko to reissue the navigation timer for 1968, then for sure, this isn't just the best watch of the year, it's the best watch ever. But if you haven't spent your life dreaming about one particular Seiko reference from the late 1960s, indeed if perhaps you hadn't heard of that reference until about a month ago, then maybe there are better watches out there for you. It sure is pretty, but maybe this one is a little bit overpriced and a little bit compromised in certain areas of specification and usability. GMTs are everywhere at the moment. You're certainly not short of other options, and indeed many of those other options are from Seiko themselves. For me personally, my eyes have not been on this one, they have been on a different Seiko featuring the same movement, and indeed there might be a wee Christmas present to myself coming up on the channel very soon. So, there you have it. Thank you, Mr. P, for loaning me your Seiko Navigator. It is a cracking little watch, best bought with a cracking big discount. Don't forget though, if you're buying a reissue of a watch from the late 1960s, you're buying a watch with many of the inherent limitations of a watch from the late 1960s. If this one isn't for you, check out one of the other Seiko retro reissues of recent times. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. I'll see you again in the next one.